Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Technical Advisory Committee meeting for Monday, August 28th. So first we have the regular business approval of the TAC agenda for August 28th. That's today. I'll make a motion we approve today's agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we'll move ahead. All right, the next item is the meeting minutes from July 24th. I'll make a motion that we approve the July 24th minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion or changes or amendments? If not, all in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, great, thanks. Next, we have the director's report. Chad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Good morning, members of the technical committee. We have a few items to report to you. Staff will be helping put together this list of report items for you. Starting with the Safe Routes to School program, let us request our Transportation Planning Manager, Ashley Bryers, please.
Thank you. Again, my name is Ashley Bryers, Transportation Planning Manager at WAMPO. And we sent a letter via email on Friday afternoon to all of our jurisdictional contacts, asking them if they'd like to participate in the Safe Routes to School process. This will require school district participation, and contributions will include data sharing, public engagement, resource allocation, infrastructure planning. And we're asking for everybody to respond back to us by September 8th, so then we can move forward. We are putting together an application, a short little application, so we can prioritize how many safe routes to school, or prioritize the people that want to do it over the years, because we only have so much funding, and so we may need to do like 2 or 3 in the first year, and then 2 and 3 in the next year, and then so on. So we're very excited about this Safe Routes to School planning process, and we're looking forward to working with you. So thank you. Any questions about that?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
And sorry, I apologize. I haven't had a chance to read that email yet. I saw it, but would you mind briefly explaining what, I mean, I heard you say wanting to know if any jurisdictions are interested. What does that mean? I mean, what are you looking for? That we already have an idea of where we might want to do this? Advanced planning, funding, what all would that look like?
Right. So it's the schools and the cities working together to identify sidewalk gaps, and also like education and encouragement programs at the schools, and really working on all of the 6 E's, which are engineering, education, enforcement, evaluation, engagement, and equity. And so just working through all of those processes. And the thing is once your jurisdiction has a Safe Routes to School plan, then you can go after Safe Routes to School TA funding to actually fill sidewalk gaps, improve crosswalks, as well as the education encouragement programs. So we're still at the very beginning of it. So we're figuring out what exactly it looks like, but we're needing to know who's all interested in participating. Okay,
thanks. I think that makes sense. You mentioned the TA funding. That's within the current TIP allocation, right? And so there would have to be a set aside,
right,
that agreed to by this body and the transportation policy body at some point, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you. One last question.
Yeah.
Did you, and I'm not afraid to admit this, we don't know everywhere that we do and don't have sidewalk, unfortunately. We're trying to get to it. We've got a pretty good deal going with USD 259 to kind of work on some of these issues, but WAMPO has done a survey of all the sidewalk and all the communities. Is that right?
That's correct. We did. Last year, we mapped all the existing and missing sidewalk. So we have that to start with.
Thank you. I thought so. All right, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I did have a quick question. And so is this a separate program from Missing Links? Because I think that's a federally funded program too. Or are we looking at maybe doing that as well in addition to, since it's the same requirements? Or
so I'm not exactly sure about the Missing Links program, honestly, but the Safe Routes to School program would then lead to the transportation alternatives funding that we already received, the suballocated funding. And so then we could allocate however much you all decide towards Safe Routes to School projects. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ashley. I think we all are excited to identify those projects that are required for transportation improvements in school areas. So that's a great project we are looking forward to. Next, we have Dora Gaio updating on electric vehicle plan and Bike-Ped counts. Let's request Dora.
Thank you, Chad. Good morning. I'm Dora Gaio, Transportation Planner here at WAMPO. So currently WAMPO is developing our electric vehicle networking plan. It will outline the first steps of the region that the region can take to support and encourage EV electric vehicle adoption. We're currently in the public engagement phase, which will end this Thursday. So this Thursday will be the last day to take a survey or share the survey. Currently, we have 560. I still have to input some surveys, but I think the survey has done very, very well. We've been tabling. We just had our last tabling event 2 weekends ago. And then for the Bike-Ped count, it will be this year again in September 13th, 14th, and the 16th. We're currently still looking for volunteers. We want about 100 volunteers, and currently we have about 30-ish, 32, I want to say. So we still have a lot of spots to fill out. We need someone from Valley Center, if you can help us out, Brent. And then thank you, Danielle, for getting those volunteers for Valley Hayesville. And then I think Derby is completed as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for the effort. And please help us share the volunteer opportunity for this event. We do need a lot of volunteers. And I want to thank everybody that has signed up to volunteer as well. Any questions for either EV or Bike-Ped? Thank you.
Thanks, Dora. And next we have Peter Moore, a couple of items related to, a transportation improvement program and some administrative adjustments on funding. Thank you, Peter.
Yes, I'm going to tell you a little bit of excitement that happened at the end of July here. So on July 14th, we were notified via an email from Michael Tan with the city of Wichita, forwarded from Mike Bechtel from the Federal Highway Administration, of a funding opportunity. So there were unused funds that were being flexed to state DOTs as part of an annual August redistribution before the end of the federal fiscal year. The email went on to say that MPOs may be eligible to have a portion of this funding sub-allocated to them and then award these funds to their respective TIP projects, and that they should contact their state DOT for confirmation. The email ended though with a bit of warning that the state DOTs are responsible for identifying uses for their August redistribution to their Federal Highway Administration Division offices by July 28th. So from receiving the email to needing to get these allocated, we had about 2 weeks. So we promptly messaged KDOT regarding this kind of opportunity. And on July 20th, KDOT staff reported that they could get up to $5 million in funding to different WAMPO TIP projects if they could be selected within a very tight July timeframe. So we went some emails back and forth, and there was some very strict eligibility requirements for this. So for a project to be eligible for us, it must be a fiscal 2023 or 2023 year project that has not yet obligated or be an FTA transfer project. Furthermore, given the tight time constraint, a typical TAC recommendation TPP cycle obviously would not work in the time frame we had. We had like 6.5 business days about to get all of this onto projects. So everything we would do would need to be completed via administrative adjustments to get it through quickly enough to ensure that we got all $5 million on our TIP projects. Thankfully, or for better or worse, with the constraints, there was only a few projects that were really even eligible to receive this. So we, by the time we had all the information together, it was July 24th. So just missed notification of all of this going on to TAC last month. That afternoon, like about 4 PM, we sent out an urgent meeting request to the PSC. Got 6 out of 7 of the project selection committee members together on the 25th, just a day later. And the PSC recommended the kind of following things here. So and so far as eligible projects, there's only 2 non-FTA projects. We had the Meridian Avenue project sponsored by Valley Center. We increased funding up on that project by about $820,000, and that got it up to its 80% federal funding maximum. And then we had the Harry to Pawnee and West Street, sponsored by the Wichita Public Works. We gave them about $910,000 in federal funding. That got them up to their 80% federal maximum. And then wonderfully, we were able to move a AC conversion from fiscal year 2025 back to this year in 2023. I was just looking, I thought I updated that, but it still says 2023. That should say from 2025 to 2023. But wonderfully, that did help shore up a known budget deficit that we had in 2025. So that was very good there. And then as far as the remainder of the funds, we put about $1.7 million onto the Delano Transit Center. So those were the recommendations from the project selection committee. The actions by the PSC were enacted by the following administrative adjustments. So 3.15 on the 25th enacted the funding for the Delano Transit Center. And then 3.16, which we got through on August 2nd, was funding for the West Street and Meridian Avenue projects. So we were quite elated that we could get all this in, because it was a kind of a use it or lose it opportunity, and we were able to get it on these projects.
Peter, the administrative adjustment on 8.2 didn't preclude you from getting in that deadline of July 28th?
Yes, so we were able to notify KDOT of our intentions to put it on that project so they could, as I understand, communicate that. I don't know all the details on that part. But if we wanted to get all $5 million specifically with the FTA project, we had to have that to KDOT. Well, KDOT had to have the FTA transfer on the books by 7/31. But in order to process that administrative adjustment, Nick actually stayed after on July 25th to get them a letter so that they could process that letter by 7/26. So to be, I guess, abundantly clear, according to the original email we received, KDOT had to notify their intentions on what projects they wanted to fund by July 28th. And then for the FTA project to have that transfer completed, KDOT had to have that put together by July 31st. But for administrative reasons, we needed to get that letter for the FTA project to KDOT for processing by July 26th. That's what they asked us to do. And then insofar as the other projects, once we notified KDOT of our intentions to put funding on those different non-FTA projects, and they knew which ones, the timeline wasn't quite as tight. I believe that was sometime like September, like 3rd week of September is when they had to have that for their obligation so they could get it into their STIP, as I understand. I hope that answers the question. But if we didn't get that FTA project, we really didn't have many places to put that 1.7 million that we were absolutely sure could absorb the funds.
Appreciate the quick turnaround and the fast work on enabling to get these funds. So definitely appreciate that.
Thank you.
Peter, also to support Mayor's comment, project selection committee also met in such a short time, and some of them were on vacation and they called in from Zoom or whatever meetings. Despite their vacation and travels, their commitment is just amazing and staff also was working very hard, like Ashley, Nick, and Peter, and all were pulling this together. And more importantly, KDOT, Allison Smith and her staff was so helpful, because when the time is short and when we miss deadlines, and sometimes KDOT's partnership is critical. So thank you, Mayor. That's all. Peter, next item, right, Peter? That TIP project status, I think.
Sorry, Jay, were you presenting on this or? Oh. So on page 23 of the WAMPO tip policy, requires a bi-monthly progress report for the projects program to receive the WAMPO suballocated federal funding in the current fiscal year, or that received it in past fiscal years but are not yet finished. Will also be reported to the Transportation Policy Board on September 12th. I'm sorry, Nick, I'm not familiar with these projects. I didn't see that we were going to present on these. Could I ask you to ensure I report this correctly?
This is the last bi-monthly update during the current federal fiscal year. The next one will be projects for 2024 that are scheduled to be constructed that year or that from a previous year but not yet completed. There have been updates to this table since last time. Some projects have been completed, and you may notice that the Hayesville project for Seneca and 63rd Street is no longer on here. That's because it was moved to 2024. It is expected to obligate in October. And you can see a copy of this in all of your packets, not just linked to, but actually it is physically in the packet as a page. So if you have any questions about these updates, or better yet, any updates on them, that would be great. And you should expect after we present this to TPB, we will send out the request for information for the next bi-monthly update. So yes, this is ongoing. You keep having to do it over and over again. We'll try to make it easy for you. And if there's any way we could make it easier for you, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Nick. Next, we have a few funding opportunities, like grant opportunities. The links are in the packet. Like there is KDOT cost share program that you're very familiar with, and then a couple of grant opportunity program like cybersecurity grant program and smart grants that are due in October. Please feel free to review those. And if jurisdictions need any support from WAMPO staff in terms of support of letters or any other, please feel free to reach out to us. That's all on those items of 3. And the final item to report to you this morning is upcoming KDOT local consults. That's on October 18th. For your calendars, 9 a.m. to noon at Wichita State University Hughes Metropolitan Complex. So with that, any questions, any clarifications? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Chad. Great update. All right, next we have public comments. Are there any comments from those that are here or online? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is our action item. We have one action item. It's the 2023 UPWP update amendment number 3. Ashley.
Thank you. All right, so the UPWP is our annual budget, and we prepare it in November or December of the year prior, and then make amendments as we need to. This is our 3rd amendment, which is a little unusual for having so many, but it's just been necessary. So this 3rd amendment public comment period was from August 9th to August 24th. We did not receive any public comments, and it includes a couple of items, including WAMPO's participation in KDOT's K-15 corridor management plan. We're going to be providing some funds towards that project. And then the City of Wichita's Reconnecting Communities pilot grant for the 21st Street corridor needed to be included in our UPWP because it's planning funds, even though it's not a WAMPO project. So it's now reflected in there. We've also added that we're working on addressing food access concerns and then adjusting the anticipated expenditures and budget based on all of these efforts. If this amendment is approved, the CPG and local match in the document will be just about 2.4 million. And we will be needing to do an administrative adjustment here fairly soon to adjust some funding on the economic development project. So just to let you know, that will be, you'll be notified of that after that happens. So the action options today are to recommend approval as presented, not recommend approval, or recommend approval with specific changes. And we recommend approving as presented. Are there any questions?
All right, if there's no questions, I'll make a motion that we approve the 2023 UPWP Amendment 3 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Next, we have discussion and updates. First one is the MT 2050 survey results.
Yes, thank you. So we've talked a lot about how we were doing public engagement for the MTP 2050 update. And so we wanted to provide you with the results of all of our public engagement. We received 832 surveys from when the survey was open from May 13th to July 31st. We had the surveys in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And we tabled wherever would have us, including this long list here. So we had 27 outreach events, 13 listening sessions, and we spent over 200 hours throughout this process, going to meetings, specifically different DAB meetings and listening sessions, and then various events. It was really good because we got to have specific conversations with members of the community about what they would like for this plan to look like. All right, so now Julian is going to go through these survey results because he put them all together. Thank you.
Okay, so we will start with the geographical area that we covered. You know what the WAMPO region looks like. It's all of Sedgwick County, some of Butler and Sumner County. And this is a map of all of the density of surveys received per zip code. As you can see, the more densely populated that area is, the more surveys we received. Here is our population density in the WAMPO region. And as you can see, the previous slide matches very closely to the population density. So it is always a struggle getting out there to the less populated areas, especially in the Western WAMPO region. So if you have any recommendations on areas to go to in our following round of public engagement, especially to get out to places like Cheney, we would love to go to more community events during our following rounds of public engagement. We asked demographic questions. So we'll start with age. This is actually a little interesting for surveys. The age tends to skew towards older adults who are filling out surveys, but for this one, younger adults, 18 to 35-year-olds, are the bulk of our survey respondents. And that's represented by the pink and blue slices of that pie chart right there. As you'll see, minors are underrepresented, the yellow slice, the 8% or the 4% right there. And that's because we didn't go to any events that specifically targeted minors. Like we didn't go to any school events or anything like that. So minors are underrepresented on this survey. Oops, sorry about that. How do I go back? Okay, we also asked questions about ethnicity and race. So we'll start with ethnicity compared to our existing conditions report. That is a report that was made by WAMPO using the US Census, the 2020 census. And as you can see, we did receive very close to the same amount. Maybe we actually received a little more Hispanic respondents than our representative of the WAMPO region. But it is very close to the existing condition reports that we had here. So that's nice. We did reach out to the Hispanic community quite a bit. You might have seen on the slide that Ashley showed that we went to a No More Nights festival, and we went to the District 6 Advisory Board, which has a very large Hispanic community in it. And as for race, we did ask, compared to our existing conditions report, we asked a few more races. So in the existing conditions report, you'll notice we don't include American Indian or Alaskan Native, Hawaiian or other Native Pacific Islander. And we also didn't include in our existing conditions report prefer to self-describe. So we did go into a lot more detail here to show exactly who is answering our survey. But you'll see that for the races that people were allowed to choose on the existing condition report and on the survey, that they do match very closely. You'll see that there's a large percentage of white people in both. And then the Black or African-American community have similar size of respondents, same with the Asian community. And then we did have the option for all of our slides to not respond. And that's what this gray bar right here is representing. We had that for the ethnicity report as well. I just didn't manage to mention it. And you'll see the gray bar here also represents people who chose not to respond to answer these demographic questions. And so we asked household income, of course, and we did receive a wide mix of different household incomes. The largest group of respondents was between $25,000 and $49,999 a year. And sorry, that was the last demographic question. Were there any questions about the demographics? No? Okay, then I will move on. We also asked questions. This graph might be a little confusing, but I'll explain it to you now. We asked our respondents to rank the importance of certain goals and objectives for our MTP 2050 plan. So we asked the question, how do the following uses of transportation investments rank in importance? The yellow bar that you'll see all throughout here on the very bottom represents the respondents who chose this as their first priority. So maintenance of existing transportation infrastructure, that received the bulk of people who said this is their top priority. The gray bar at the top, like the last couple of slides, represents people who chose not to answer or they left an invalid response. So that was about 12% of respondents who left invalid or chose not to respond to these ranking questions. And what I find most useful to look at are the yellow, pink, and the teal light blue, because those are the top three most important. That's people rank that as their most important. And also that magenta maroon color right under the gray, that means that people said that this was their least important priority. So beautifying the green space between roads and sidewalks, not a lot of people found that very important, unfortunately. I believe it was 27% of respondents, that's almost a third of respondents, said that that was their lowest priority. Priorities for transportation investment in the greater Wichita region. The first two responses here were extremely popular with respondents. They both received about a third of the people's of respondents' first priority. And so those are transportation improvements that increase safety for all users and reduce traffic congestion, and making the transportation system more equitable and accessible to improve access to all destinations in the Wichita region. Now you'll see the following two after that received about the same score, but it's pretty worth noting that reducing greenhouse gas emissions and minimizing air quality effects from the transportation system, I believe it was more than a third. It was like 36% of people said this is their lowest priority. So that's something to take into account as we move forward. And then the following slides will have these particular words underlined because they were included in our vision, our goals, and objectives. So we wanted to know what people thought about our transportation system and how we can make it more connected and multimodal. And like with the last slide, where nearly a third of people said that they wanted the transit system to be more accessible and reach more routes or reach more destinations, the top response here was making the transit system a more viable option. That received, I believe it was 33% of people who said that that was their most important priority on this slide. It's interesting to note that supporting economic growth by decreasing the commute time received a bit of a mixed responses. So it was almost tied for second in terms of people who said that this was their top priority, but it was also tied for last in terms of people who said that this was their lowest priority. You'll see that dark blue bar at the top underneath the gray. That shows the amount of people who said that that was their lowest priority. It was tied for last with reducing single-person vehicle trips. Moving on to equity and accessibility. Improving access to basic human needs and services was the most important goal in this slide by a landslide. I think it was nearly 49.8% of people said that this was their most important priority on this slide, improving basic human needs, access to basic human needs and services. And the following two responses were ranked very, very closely. Moving on to safety and reliability. So our objectives to make the transportation system safe and reliable were broken down into these 7 measurable outcomes. And the most popular, of course, was reducing fatalities and serious injuries. Sorry about that. And then we can see that improving the predictability of travel times, very not exactly unpopular, but people thought that that was the lowest priority on the scale here. And as for environmental and financial stewardship, this is another interesting one because you can see that the top rated choice here, utilizing cost benefit analysis when selecting projects, received a lot of people who said that this was their top priority. And it also received the most people who said that this was their lowest priority, utilizing cost benefit analysis. As for the following 3, they ranked very closely to each other. And were there any questions about the ranking slides? Nope.
I'd be curious to know if you had it broken down by age, perhaps, like beautification, did it rank higher with youth than the older Americans?
We haven't cross-tabulated that yet, but that's something that we can look into doing. We have started cross-tabulating a few of the other responses, like trying to see which respondents viewed safety and reducing congestion as which one they thought was more important based off of how they ranked other priorities. But we haven't looked at the age yet. That is something that we would like to look into. If there's no other questions, I'll move on to our questions about congestion. We asked people how often they experience congestion in the WAMPO region, and 59% of respondents said they experience it at least weekly, if not daily. That's 28% of people who said that they receive it, they experience congestion daily. And then we asked where they experience the congestion, and this map shows the intersections where there's the most reported congestion, which are displayed through the heat map, the dots on the heat map. So the brighter the intersection, the dot is, the more respondents said that that's where they experience congestion in that intersection. We also allowed them to name specific streets, roads, corridors. So if a corridor is particularly thick with that pink line on it, that means that a lot of people said they experienced congestion there. And no surprise, if we took the heat map away, Kellogg is very thick with people who say that they experience congestion there. It's also notable that 21st Street and Central, and I believe Oliver also said those corridors experience a lot of congestion. And then we, moving on, we asked people why they think they experience congestion. The respondents were allowed to select as many of these options as they wanted. We encouraged them to only select 5. Most people selected a lot more than 5, but it is notable that the first 4 responses, construction, peak hour traffic volumes, crashes, and distracted drivers, ranked well above the rest of the responses. And so these are the reasons that people perceive they experience congestion. Similarly, we asked people about how they feel with the safety in the WAMPO region, especially compared with other metropolitan areas. So 65% of respondents feel at least neutral toward the safety in the WAMPO region compared to other metropolitan areas. And only 35% of respondents said that they felt safer in the WAMPO region. And so that's not a terrible ranking here, but 27% of people did feel less safe in the WAMPO region than other metropolitan areas. Our goal is to make sure that our drivers, our walkers and bike riders, everybody in this transportation area feels safe. So we asked, where are the safety issues? This is similarly mapped to our congestion map. And you'll see there's a lot of overlap where people say they experience congestion and where they feel unsafe. So like I said, with the congestion map, the brighter the dot is, the more people said that they experience or they feel less safe in that area. And the thicker the pink line, the less people feel safe on that particular corridor. No surprise that Kellogg is also very thick. And that was it for congestion and safety. Were there any questions about the congestion or safety responses?
I do have a question, and I heard you mention this, so it probably makes sense. I heard you mention the word perception, which we all know is reality, right? It's fine. So was there any, I'm assuming not, any point along the way where people were asked to define what they thought congestion was, or was it just truly their perception?
It was just their perception. We didn't ask them to define it, and we did not define it for them on the survey.
And that's fine. That makes sense. Did you happen to ask, did you say, I think I saw it was 832 people?
That's right.
Did you happen to ask a question of how many of those people actually ever left Wichita? I'd say that jokingly, but it'd be nice to know because we all understand the perception, and it is what it is. Most of the folks we hear from, I'm convinced they've barely left their neighborhood, let alone the city. So that's all. Thank you. This is good information. Is this available for us to?
Yes.
Fine. Okay. Thank
This
you.
and then the community listening session summaries that we created will also be available on the agenda. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Could you elaborate a little bit on how you conducted your outreach to the Latino community?
Yeah, so we just cast as wide a net as we could. If there was an event going on, especially in the North End, we looked for Empower, which puts on a lot of events. We requested to table at several events with Empower. The only ones that we were allowed to was No More Nights. And then this one wasn't associated with Empower. We were allowed to go to the Evergreen Library and go to one of their district advisory board meetings for the Wichita City Council District 6 Advisory Board. And those are the only two events that we were allowed to go to that we had requested to go to, but we did cast a wide net. As I said, we requested a lot of places that said that they couldn't have us there because we weren't exactly vendors, and there were other various reasons that we weren't allowed to go to certain tabling events. Yes.
Just want to. I just want to commend you for all the outreach. I think it's a fantastic job of all the events you went to and everything. I think it's much more robust than I see a lot of other similar outreach on it. So I think if any of you guys want ideas on how to do the outreach, you might talk to them about what they did.
Thank you. That's very kind. The whole team worked very hard, very long hours, especially in the heat. Any other questions?
Comment. So I agree with Julian that the staff had spent some hours. Some of the days were hard, and they were diligent in making sure we have a good outreach effort. Also, I want to provide you the context for this. The long-range transportation plan is due in May of 2025. During the development of this long-range transportation plan called MTP, Metropolitan Transportation Plan, not only the surveys are meant to be a transparent process for this long-range transportation plan development, but also to incorporate what is public's perception and what is the direction that public would like to see the future of our transportation system. So it's both, we have great committee members and smart people in our TAC and all, with many talented folks, but still public participation is a part of a requirement that Federal Highway Administration needs us in developing our long-range transportation plan. So just want to provide that context, why and the extent of this. And like Alan said, this is really unprecedented. The number of folks that staff went out and reached, really everyone participated, like Ashley, Nick, Peter, Dylan, Dora, Jessica. Every one of the staff had to go because of the amount of events that we listed together and then go out. And of course, Ashley's leadership is to be commended on this, mentoring everybody as well. So that's, thank you.
Thank you. And I just see WAMPO out there at the National Night Out in Hayesville, so I appreciate WAMPO being out there with the table set up. So I'm not sure what the participation was, but I'm glad you're out there. So.
All right, thank you. Moving on.
All right, next we have the coordinated public transit. Ashley.
Thank you. So while I'll be presenting this is work that Marcella did. She just has class this morning, so I'll be presenting. So the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan is a plan for coordinating public transit. And we needed to have a survey as part of this process. So it was available from June 16th to July 31st. And we promoted this at some of the same events that we were at for the MTP process. We had the survey in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese again. And we spent about 80 to 95 total staff hours promoting this survey. We went to the Wichita Transit Center 8 times to talk to people as they were waiting for their bus or waiting to transfer or getting off their bus if they would talk to us before they moved on. We went to the Mays Farm and Art Market, Starkey, the VA, and then to the Wichita Sedgwick County Access Advisory Board. And we ended up, like I said, with 262 surveys. So I'll go through just a few of the survey responses. The entire survey response and actually the draft plan are all linked in your agenda because it's out for public comment right now. So this question asked what accommodations people need. And 59% of people said that they needed some sort of accommodation in order to ride transit. This one asked where trips ended. And 65% of people said that they ended at jobs, grocery stores, medical appointments, or other. This question asked if there were places that people cannot go with existing services. And it was really interesting to see that other was a very high percentage, but then jobs, medical appointments, and activities were also high. So here are the others from that previous slide. So it was kind of varied, but church was a pretty big one. People just answered no. So then that was a response. And shopping, Social Security office, and things like that. So then we had what changes to transportation service options in the regions would make it more appealing or easier for you to ride. And 54% of people said extending operating hours, more routes, weekend operations, and reduced waiting times would all be helpful. And those are things, we've heard before, but it's good to reinforce the desires of people. And so, like I mentioned, the plan is out for public comment right now. It will be closing on September 23rd. We'll be presenting these survey results at the September TPP meeting, and then we'll have the draft plan for you all to review at your September meeting and then present it for TPP's approval in October. Any questions about these survey results?
Thank you, Ashley. I have a quick comment on related to transit. Ashley and I also worked on a contract with the Regional Transit Implementation Plan as well. That's going to be starting quick. Just to give you a heads up that that regional transit plan, how does it look like? That seamless transit providers from Derby, Hayesville, and Wichita, and county and all. And our council member Justin Shores is also from representation towards this project as well. So there's so much interest throughout the region about this. While we're on the topic of transit, I wanted to share with you that it's only 1 year, but a great opportunity to see how can we make this regional transit system efficient and more smoother with all these providers and boundaries. So just want to share with you, and more will be coming up in the next meetings as well. Anything else, Ashley, on that project?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have the 2020 commuter flow report. Peter.
Hello, so we updated our commuter flows report for 2023, covers all 22 cities within the WAMPO region. And information about each city includes inflow and outflow, total counts, a historical trends chart, percent of population in the labor force, mean travel time to work, and a workplace and residence heat map. Our source for this was the United States Census Bureau. Specifically, they're on the map tool to help us aggregate different census block data. And the most recent data available is from 2020. So with these commuter flows report, the census data always lags behind by about 3 years. So our 2022 report was on 2019 data, and accordingly, our 2023 report is on 2020 data. Also very fascinating because we can see how things change from 2019 to 2020. So essentially with our commuting flows for each census block, we have information about the people that live in that census block and where all of those people, like which census blocks they go work in. So what you can do is you can take cities like, for example, Wichita, Derby, or Hayesville, which we'll look at here shortly, take all those census blocks, see which ones have the same workplace and residence in those census blocks, and you can aggregate and say, this is how many people both live and work in Derby. Then you can also look at it where all those census blocks, you can look who lives there and look at where all their work destinations are. And so you can develop a commuter outflow and see how many people are commuting out of Derby to work and how many people are commuting in conversely. So this may be best explained through kind of a little example. So first we'll look at Wichita. So about 80,000 or so people commute to work in Wichita, primarily from places within the WAMPO region. 118,000 live and work, and about 55,000 people commute out of Wichita, particularly in the WAMPO region, to go work as well. We had our 2020 decennial census population was just under 400,000. We had nearly 253,000 commuter flow trips all in all. Most notable about Wichita is the internal. It's the only one where the internal workflow, where people live and work out of all the 22 municipalities, is the highest out of all 3 categories. I was looking at that, and if you had to make a more rigid definition of the central hub of a metropolitan area, I think you're going to end up finding this might be a pretty good metric for that. The place where people live and work is the highest category of commuter flows. And so in this next one, it kind of just compares from year to year how things change. And so most notably in 2019 to 2020, all 3 categories of inflow, people that work and live in the same area, and then outflow, people commuting out, all 3 categories dropped slightly. So on these graphs, the light blue one is the same in both bar graphs. It's living and employed in Wichita. And then on the top one, you have employed in Wichita, but living outside. So people who are commuting in. And then on the bottom, you have in living in Wichita, but employed outside. So people who are commuting out. And again, all 3 of them just kind of had a very similar proportional decline, not big. So like 120,000 to 118,000. And from 2019 to 2020 of those people who are living and working and employed in Wichita, but there wasn't a change in just one, but not the others. But it's not the same for all municipalities. So looking at Derby, about 5,000 people live outside of Derby, but work in or commute in. 1,670 work and live in Derby. And about just under 10,000 commute outside. Population of 25,625. In the 2020 decennial census. But you can see the internal inflow and outflow are quite a bit different for the cities, and you'll see that's more of a trend for all of the municipalities in the WAMPO region. You can see how it compares here from year to year on the next one. So significant change from 2019 to 2020 and employed in Derby, but living outside, dropped quite a bit, but had a slight bump of people who started commuting outside of Derby to work. Not quite as big as the drop of people coming in, but it's there, similar to how I think we'll see in Hayesville here. So Hayesville, we had about 2,000 people commute in, 416 that live and work in Hayesville, and about just 4,800 that live in Hayesville but commute outside. Population of 11,262 people. You look here. From Hayesville, sorry, there's quite a few cities. Hayesville had a slight decrease in people who were employed in Hayesville but living outside, but it's not too much different than where they were in 2016. Kind of varied, and you'll see this. Some of the municipalities didn't have as big a jumps from 2019 to 2020. I guess in some, looking at all of these different inflows and outflows, I wasn't sure what I was going to find when I knew we were going to be able to look at the first year of the pandemic versus the year prior. There were changes, but nothing was quite as dramatic as I thought it would be. It's very similar to these kind of graphs where you may be looking in a percent range of 2 or 3% difference between that year and the year prior. Any questions for me? I just wanted to show those 3 examples. Any questions for me on the commuter flows?
So am I correct in saying that this is only about people who are traveling for employment, not other types of trips?
Just employment. This is where people live versus where they reported where they work.
Actually, a follow-up to that, and it's not a new comment, but especially in light of the previous presentation where the places that people wanted to go, only a relatively small minority were to jobs, and the rest were to other places. Is there anything comparable, any information at all about where people travel other than the commuting?
I don't have that information from the data we used to compile this. This was just.
We're just talking about commuting. Is that information available?
Oh, who like commute from other places or telework or just travel? Yeah, so for that kind of information, we might be able to use our travel demand model that we're developing to produce that, which would be an interesting report for the future to see if we could, just see those other reasons why people move around the region.
All right, well, thank you.
Oh, very welcome.
Very interesting. So.
Yeah.
All right, next we have the K254 corridor report.
So the Kansas Department of Transportation and the K254 Corridor Development Association are developing a corridor management plan for K254 between Wichita and El Dorado. And then Chad, did you want to give some context on our?
Thank you, Peter. I think most of you know that K254 corridor study is happening, and there's a corridor development association meetings that happen periodically, and I was also one of the members for the steering committee member, so contributing to data and then project information. So as part of that, Peter, Dylan, and myself, we worked together on some statistics and reports for that corridor, and that's what Peter and Dylan are sharing now. Thank you.
Yeah, so the report included that we put together, we had an annual average daily traffic and truck volumes. We used the same tools with the commuter flows to develop a couple of those just between El Dorado and Wichita, and then the different counties. We aggregated those census blocks, and then we did a quick map of just the larger employers along the K254 corridor and did a couple crash trends with the VMT or vehicle miles traveled data that we were able to create. So first, here's kind of your map. It's about 27.3 miles. That is from I-135 north, and that actually is all the way to Main Street. The data we use for the average annual daily traffic takes it all the way to Main Street, or includes that. For those of you that drive this quite a bit, which I have, Southwest Boyer Road is kind of the entrance, and then if you get further into El Dorado, it turns more into a major arterial, perhaps. But just in case anybody has done this quite a bit, you would know that, yeah. Anyway, Southwest Boyer Road, it has 2 eastbound and 2 westbound lanes separated by grass median. It is an at-grade highway for most of its lane, excluding the interchanges at I-135, Hillside, Oliver, and Woodlawn, and K-196. I mentioned that because it becomes a safety issue for crashes later on, just with those high-speed different intersections at grade all along its length. The average annual daily traffic for the entire corridor in 2022 was about 23,000 vehicles, with approximately 9.8% of that being trucks. So we kind of broke that out by the segments that were available. And it was nice to see our average that we calculated wasn't being skewed by one segment. So it is actually representative of the corridor as a whole. So you'll see the truck volumes and traffic and passenger total vehicle volumes, they go between like 21,000 and 23,000, about 9 to as high as 11% on the truck volumes. But that's pretty consistent for the corridor, except at the very end where the truck volumes increase when you get into El Dorado. And then as far as employers, so it's a key corridor for many business and industries along this path. We developed some slides that show how many people are employed at different locations by sector. And it's good to note the businesses that we're going to show are ones that had more than 50 employees. There are many, many more businesses along the corridor, but if we tried to show them in a map, it became immediately too crowded to be of any use to anyone. So there's about 6,500 people with Koch Industries on the west end in Wichita, taking the lion's share as the biggest location, about 3,000 people. But just to be certain, these maps are far from exhaustive. We imagine a lot of people, other business stuff, use this corridor for different purposes and different things. So yeah, you can kind of see here our different employers along there. It was actually a much larger list than what I thought we were going to find here. You can see Koch Industries, Wichita Concrete Pipe Co., Dold Foods, quite a few up there. Gets a little sparse in the mid-range. Not a huge amount of large businesses along there, but then picks back up again as you get back to El Dorado with just lots of different manufacturing and transportation and energy. So I was gonna have Dylan here talk about the commuter flows he created for the corridor.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Yeah, I just developed a few maps to show you guys today. And this map shows here where people work who live in El Dorado. And as you can see, 77 people work in Towanda who live in El Dorado, and they would use K254 to go to and from work. Same thing in Benton, 7 people in Benton, 18 in Bel Air, 2 in Keachai, and then 34 in Park City, and a total of 1,370 in Wichita. And I would say that a large number, if not most of the people that go to work that live in El Dorado would use K254. And this is the same map, but vice versa, where people live who work in El Dorado. So as you can see, 80 people live in Towanda that work in El Dorado, and they use K254 to go to and from work. 43 in Benton, 18 in Keachai. The 42 is like kind of like misplaced somehow, but it's up there. It's the 42 in Park City and 878 in Wichita, and that's the same thing. Most people that live in Wichita would go to would use K254 to go to work in El Dorado. And then one last slide showing you guys the number of people going to the adjacent county to work. So 3,817 people would go to Butler County to work, and 13,673 would come from Butler and go to Sedgwick County to work. And a large portion of that would use K254 to go to and from work. And that's all I have. I'll give it back to Peter. Thank you.
And the last section we're going to cover is just the crash data. So for the years that we had AADT and crash data, for 2017 to 2022, 2022 had the highest crash per vehicle mile travel in the past 6 years. And according to KDOT, we're still tabulating 2022, so that could go up there. On our next slide, we did fatalities for VMT and injuries per VMT. So it had a total of 15 fatalities and 293 injuries over the past 6 years. Again, with the highest rate of injuries in 2022. Keep in mind with the fatalities, thankfully they're quite rare. So often bumps in that particular chart are caused by tragedies, individual tragedies that occurred that year. So maybe not as telling as it might seem at first glance. And then from I-35 North to Southwest Boyer Road, just mentioning those 23 intersections where we have most of them at grade, putting them at particular risk of those high speed at angle collisions. Particular K254 in Greenwich and K254 in Andover Road are notable for their number of crash related fatalities from 2012 to 2023. When I spoke with KDOT, they requested this information from KDOT. They gave me 2023 and 2022 data. They just warned me that it wasn't complete. They had 6 and 5 fatalities respectively, with K254 in Greenwich having 6 fatalities and represents the single highest fatality intersection in the WAMPO region for the past 10 years. Or I guess past 11, because we have 2023 in there. If anybody would like, we do have an exhaustive report over all the intersections on K254 for all the years where we had complete data from 2012 to 2021. And yeah, that kind of concludes our report that we gave or developed for the K254 Corridor Development Association. Any questions for me?
I have one. So on the daily traffic and stuff on 254, does it break it down to how many are going to the landfill in Butler County?
No, I just had east and west segment amounts between sometimes what seemed arbitrary points. Sometimes it was main roads, sometimes it was several main roads, but just basic. I had the label of the segment and then an amount of people that were traveling between.
Thanks.
I know this is the report on K2 254, but do you have any data on like the turnpike? I know a lot of people use the turnpike to go from El Dorado to Wichita.
The turnpike, I do have some of that AADT data that I could compile for you. It's in the segments, and so I would need to compile that so you can get something more like this that could be a little bit easier to look at. But yes, that could be, we could create that for you.
Okay, because I know the people going to North Wichita would use K254, but people going to South Wichita and Spirit and things like that would use a turnpike.
It's a bit faster. It saves you like 5 or 6 minutes.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? If not, we'll move on to the Intelligent Transportation System Plan Update Process and Steering Committee.
Okay, so as we've been talking at this past several meetings, we're updating our intelligent transportation systems plan. Again, just a brief overview, the plan will document intelligent transportation systems so that future integration deployment of such infrastructure can take place in an organized and coordinated fashion. So we developed a timeline for the project that has us starting this next month with the formation of a steering committee and ends with staff hopefully presenting the final plan to TAC in April of 2024. Our next steps here, we have developed a list of potential steering committee members. We have that list in the meeting packet. Any suggestions about people you might think would be good fits for this? We're very open to hearing that. Our plan is to put this list of TAC steering committee members up for recommendation next month. Yeah, any questions for me on the ITS plan?
Oh, quick comment. Peter might reach out to jurisdictions like City of Wichita staff or City of Derby staff on fiber optics updates and so on from what happened in the past so that he can update the ITS plan. And in addition to the architecture along the road is like, the cameras and all. So he'll be updating that and he'll reach out to you. So we're all on one page on how the regional plan looks like.
All right, thank you. All right, next we have the social media report, either Jessica or Ashley.
Okay. Thank you. Jessica Hutton is not here today, so I'll be presenting on her work. So we have been doing a ton of new social media outreach in order to try to increase awareness about WAMPO and also involve people and inform them and also hopefully make people be interested in what we're doing. And those all align with our public engagement goals from our public participation plan. There is a social media report in your packet that shows you what we've done in the last 90 days. It's truly been amazing. Our numbers have gone up a lot. Our Facebook reach went up by 385%, and our Facebook engagement rate went up by 244%. Instagram has gone up by 5,000%, which is crazy. And we've just really done a really good job of doing all that. Now, we have realized that it's still more effective to meet people in public and go table places. While we're trying to do this engagement online and reach people, it's just, like I said, still easier to talk to people in public. We are going to continue to increase our awareness and keep the public informed. And our next aim is to review all this data and learn about how we can improve all of our digital marketing and generate more public interest in what WAMPO does. So any questions on all of that?
All right, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to the safe system approach for a safer vehicle.
Yes, so real quick, Vanessa, before you go, I just want to do a quick update. So this is our third quarterly update from KDOT about the safe system approach. We're very thankful for the time that KDOT, Vanessa, and Susan have been giving us. So thank you. Vanessa, would you like to share your screen, or do you want us to?
I can certainly share. Yeah. Make sure I can work. Okay. Is it showing as a full screen on your end?
No.
Oh, one sec.
There we go. Okay, it's starting
now. Okay. It does some funny things on my end when I change things around. So sorry about that. Okay, well,
just a second.
Go ahead.
Move it.
Okay.
To the other screen. There we go. Okay, now you're good.
Good. Okay. All right. Thank you. So thank you everyone for having us. My name is Vanessa Sparn. I'm Chief of Transportation Safety at KDOT. We've come before you a couple different times to discuss the safe system approach. And usually how we address this is we remind you kind of what the elements are of the safe system. And then we give a federal perspective as to what our federal partners are telling us and everything coming down from USDOT. And then we talk about what we're doing in this area already in Kansas. So first up will be my colleague, Susan DeCourcy from NHTSA. She is the Region 7 Administrator from NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It is one of the federal agencies that has a critical role in the safer vehicle objective. And then I'm going to talk about efforts underway in Kansas. So Susan, I'll turn things over to you.
All right. Thank you, Vanessa. And it's my pleasure to be here to talk a little bit about NHTSA and safer vehicle. So as Vanessa mentioned, we were going to talk a little bit about the safe system approach, which we did a couple of months ago, but this is just a reminder of what it consists of. And it really is, these are the key elements. And the main things I want to share here is just responsibility is shared by all stakeholders. Every single person has a role. And, you know, no matter what discipline you come from, you can find some area that you have an influence over or can contribute to it. And, you know, it's something that we really view, we want to be proactive about, not reactive. And so if we can identify problems early, then we can start addressing it before it becomes a major problem. And then one of the slides that we usually share during a safe system approach presentation is that we use like a slice of Swiss cheese, and we basically talk about redundancy is crucial, because if one part fails along the way, there's other parts that are still capable of kicking in and assisting with that. So next slide. Okay, so this is a snapshot of what we have as our tracking dashboard, and it is available for the public viewing. It's updated quarterly, and this shows those actions for safer vehicles that have either are in the planning stage, that are in progress, or have been completed. And in the top right-hand corner, when you get onto this site, you can use filters for various components. So you can drill it down to the specifics of what you're looking for. So after today, you know, if it's something that you're really wondering about what the status is, you can go to our website, the National Roadway Safety Strategy website for this dashboard, and be able to access it to see what the status is. And, you know, for safer vehicles, we are expanding the availability of the vehicle systems and those features in that vehicle to help prevent and minimize traffic crashes for both the occupants and non-occupants, such as people, pedestrians, bicyclists. So the next couple of slides are going to be able to provide more detail on specifically what NHTSA is doing. So next slide. Okay, so these are the specific actions that NHTSA has completed, and these are NRSS actions that are incorporated. And we have a website that informs consumers and the public about advanced driver assistance systems, and the website is listed there. And we have videos, animations, descriptions of various vehicle technologies in a way that we have tested with consumers to be able to ensure that the language and materials we provide are useful and resonate with the consumers. And then the next one is talking about in March of 22, NHTSA proposed significant updates to our 5-star safety ratings program, and it's also known as NCAP, which is the new car assessment program. And part of that information published in March included a 10-year roadmap for NCAP. But NHTSA also proposed specific changes that include recommendations for 4 new driver assistance technologies, strengthening test procedures and performance criteria for other driver assistance technologies, and also looked at considerations for meaningful rating systems for technologies. And we were, also looking to or wanting to have potential addition to emerging technology related to distraction, because we know that's a big problem, impaired driving, alcohol, seat belts, and there are several others. And this information was released with a 60-day notice for public comments. But we further extended that reporting system so that we would give more people the ability to comment. And you can imagine we got a lot. We got over 4,000 comments, so it takes a while to get through those. And then the last one is in June of 22, NHTSA and our partner, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, we released a final rule for the rear underride protection. And this rule requires rear impact guards on trailers and semi-trailers with sufficient strength, and the energy absorption to protect occupants of compact and subcompact passenger cars, impacting the rear of trailers at 35 miles an hour. And so we upgraded protection that it's going to be provided in crashes in which the passenger motor vehicle hits the center of the rear of the trailer or semi, in which half of the width of the passenger vehicle overlaps the rear of the trailer and semi. So these are links that takes you to additional information for that, but that's the highlight of the specific actions so far that we have undertaken. And next slide. So this one is the one that we are in progress, and the notice proposed, the notice published in March of 22 noted in the previous slide. It included discussion of steps to list for the crash avoidance rating information on the Monroney label, which is the window sticker at the point of sale on a new vehicle, and requested comments for ideas on how to provide information on that. So a review of those comments will be assessed, and the next step is to be able to provide a notice of proposed for the changes to that label that you see on new car sales. And then NHTSA, we've also been hard at work on the advancing automated emergency braking. Again, talking about our partners, FMCSA and NHTSA, we proposed a new standard for the automatic electronic braking systems for heavy vehicles this past June. And in May, we released a notice of proposed rulemaking to require automatic emergency braking and pedestrian automation emergency braking on passenger cars and light trucks. So that's really going to help for reducing the pedestrian fatalities. And then the talking about pedestrians on that next one, the automated emergency braking, that's a major advancement, as I mentioned, in keeping those people outside of the vehicle safe. And one of the things I'd really like to point out, another step in increasing pedestrian safety is truly highlights the concept of multiple layers to increase safety. So while the pedestrian AEB is something that we want to include as an automated safety countermeasure, we also want to propose a new crashworthiness pedestrian protection testing program for our NCAP assessment. So, this idea acknowledges that while drivers, never anticipate hitting a pedestrian, we know mistakes can happen. And then, so if a driver does happen to make that mistake, this new crashworthiness testing will be in place so that the consumers have the knowledge that they're purchasing a vehicle that has a safer design for a struck pedestrian if that were to occur. So it really is finding a way to protect people in a multi-layered approach, and definitely acknowledge that mistakes happen by human behavior. And then we have a seamless approach for detecting impaired drivers through our DADS program, and we continue to work on that, and that is putting an alcohol sensor in vehicles to be able to detect if someone is impaired, and if so, the car will not start. And so we're continuing to work on that. And we've got several other systems and different continuing rulemaking that we're working on for seatbelt reminder systems. And, we're really looking for any and all ways in which we can protect the driver and the occupants outside, or the people who are outside of the car. And next slide, please. And then this one is just talking about the overall safety, vehicle safety efforts at NHTSA. So we've got a variety of offices within NHTSA. So our National Center for Statistics and Analysis, they're responsible for providing a wide range of analytical and statistical support for NHTSA and the highway safety community in the areas of human, vehicle, environmental, roadway characteristics as they relate to the crash frequency and injuries, being able to identify injury mechanisms and associated crash dynamics. And they evaluate the effectiveness of crash worthiness and crash avoidance. They monitor the magnitude of traffic safety problems, and then also definitely quantify the benefits of the resulting of the proposed agency rules that we have. And then we also have a vehicle safety research that conducts research and safety testing on motor vehicles and motor vehicle equipment. And then we publish the safety reports such as the vehicle classification and equipment type, crash data. We have a roof ejection mitigation research and a modeling study on child occupant safety with unconventional seating configurations. So that just gives you an idea of the type of safety reports that we provide. And then rulemaking, that leads to the development and delivery of our rulemaking and policies that we have. And it's responsible for setting the nation's vehicle safety standards, fuel economy regulations, anti-theft, and consumer information regulations, and international harmonization and policy. So, it's a wide range of things that they also do, in addition to the operation and development of the 5-car safety rating that I talked about before. And then we have enforcement, and that is, making sure vehicle manufacturers follow our safety standards. We have our odometer fraud investigation team. It's hard to believe people still roll back odometers, but they do. And so they are out apprehending these people. And then we have communications, our Office of Communications, and that's the agency, or the office that develops all of our campaigns and our materials that you can see on our website. So you can see in a snapshot all the things that we are working on and have completed, and the different types of agencies, the offices that feed into the vehicle safety efforts. So that's all I have, and I'll turn it over to Vanessa.
Thank you, Susan. So obviously, whenever you first hear about the safer system of safer vehicle objective and kind of how it's phrased, it sounds like, well, that's definitely going to be outside of the reach of local agencies and state agencies, and that's a national discussion. But what I'm going to try and get into is some of the work that's underway within the state, and even some things that are happening in your region that fall into this area. So first off, so NHTSA has a lot of different diagrams and things that help people to understand why vehicle safety is part of the safe system. But I pulled this image from somewhere because it was a real simple, easy to read. But the biggest thing from a safety standpoint is the ability to prevent crashes and prevent injury through those advanced safety features. And I gave a couple examples here. So, your lane departure warning or lane keeping technology, automatic emergency braking, as Susan mentioned, adaptive cruise control. Some vehicles have the ability to do speed limiting. If you have a teen driver, you can put some rules in place through your vehicles. And then hazard warning systems. An example of this is, I heard in Sedgwick County, they're using a system called HOS, which is to tell connected vehicles when you're approaching a work zone. So they have the technology in place that then relays that information to the vehicle drivers. The second bullet is one that I think is really promising, and there's some efforts underway in Kansas. I mentioned this in the post-crash care presentation as well, but there's some connected vehicle companies that are working with Kansas 911 and Kansas Board of EMS to detect crashes and to provide that communication to 911 dispatch. That is, if we could get more and more vehicle companies coming on board, and if there were no charges for every person that has those systems, then it would be a more robust system. But I think it holds a lot of promise, particularly for rural crashes, where crash discovery can be quite delayed. Someone could get in a crash and the vehicle's not discovered, and people are not discovered for even a day or two sometimes. So that automatic detection and communication is potentially really promising. And then the third bullet is one of the things that we're looking at in safety, but the ability to utilize connected vehicle data as kind of a safety surrogate. So rather than, only looking at where crashes occurred and looking historically at kind of those dots on the map and what happened with those crashes, we actually we can work with third-party data providers that aggregate connected vehicle data, and they can tell you nothing, there's no personal information, everything's analyzed in kind of a trend standpoint, but they can tell you where there's a potential for increased crash risk. So examples of some of the things that they can give you is where speeding is occurring, where there's harsh braking or harsh maneuvers that are occurring, or sudden accelerations, which would be indicative of kind of aggressive driving. So those are areas that we're starting to explore and look into to understand what data is currently available and how might it tell us ongoing trends of where there might be a heightened crash risk. Okay, so we've mentioned before that there's a statewide executive coalition called the Drive to Zero Coalition. In total, there's 22 members. You can see here the logos of all the agencies are represented. We also have the House and Senate Transportation Committee chairs on that coalition as well. And I wanted to just circle for you the different agencies that are involved that are going to have some involvement in the safer vehicle area. In terms of, you can see the Highway Patrol up here, they're going to deal with commercial vehicle safety a lot. But also Cisco, which is a private partner, deals with advanced vehicle technologies, and Department of Revenue deals with licensing, right? So we each kind of have different roles to play. So I put some of those up here as examples. So Revenue deals with licensing, Highway Patrol deals with commercial vehicles, the Department of Education deals with school bus safety. The Insurance Department deals with the insurance marketplace in Kansas. And then KDOT, which is where I am, we have a state highway safety office that receives NHTSA funding, and we're going to be responsible for things like vehicle heat stroke campaigns and vehicle recall notifications and things like that. So we're still kind of working through those processes with NHTSA and our partners in terms of what kind of our role is in terms of getting some of those new communications out. The other thing that has been underway for a couple of years, our Bureau of Innovative Technologies did a connected autonomous vehicle vision plan. And I wanted to go over that briefly with you today. So there is a vision plan and there's implementation documents that are available for reference. But basically, the document identifies the opportunities, challenges, and next steps. It includes legislative action, state agency blueprints. So there's several state agencies that are listed. It includes an implementation plan specifically for KDOT. And then there's different types of initiatives. So there's data initiatives, agency and organizational structuring initiatives, partnership initiatives, policy, legislation, regulation, and public education and outreach. So I mentioned those state agency blueprints, and here's the different ones. So there's a blueprint for Department of Agriculture, one for Commerce, one for Emergency Management, one for Revenue, one for Transportation, one for IT, one for the Insurance Department, one for legislators, one for Highway Patrol. The Kansas Traffic Safety Resources Office is a extension of KDOT, but that organization, and then the Kansas Turnpike Authority. So these two links here can get you to these documents where you can see the vision plan, and you can see that Appendix A has all those state agency blueprints. So one of the things that is why it's called a vision plan is because obviously this is largely, an innovative area where these companies are doing a lot of different things. It's going to continue to evolve in the years ahead, and there's going to be some pretty big advances. And so it's really important that a vision plan has some nimbleness to it. So there's what they did with this plan is they set out their mission, and their vision really focuses on being able to allow for evolution and partnering, but ultimately trying to align with some shared goals that we have as public serving agencies in terms of connected autonomous vehicles have the potential to to improve freight efficiencies, to reduce crashes and fatalities, to spur economic development, to strengthen decision making, like the data sources that are available and things like that. So the plan lays out that. I did add a couple slides since once I sent this to WAMPO last week, but an example of one that is already underway, KDOT is working on a commercial and agricultural pilot project on US 83 in western Kansas. And the idea being is that there is some information related to traffic, weather, and parking availability that are all collected and compiled. And then through a dispatch system, it would be communicating that information to the commercial vehicle companies that are operating along this kind of full statewide corridor north-south. And then I wanted to highlight one other one. So under our Bureau of Innovative Technologies, we actually have an innovation technology grant program. And Wichita, City of Wichita, I guess it was in 2020, so it's not so recent, but the project's underway. They applied for a project for Greenwich Road for roadside unit radios. So it's an approximately 4.5 mile fiber corridor between US 54 400 and K96. So it connects the city's central server to KDOT's fiber system. And then there's a fiber sharing agreement associated with that. The project also serves KDOT by providing redundancy with the fiber communication system for the metropolitan area along that corridor. And so that's a real high level overview of what that project includes. So I went ahead and provided the points of contact. So at KDOT, it's Mitch Southers who runs Innovative Technologies. And then the application had Mike Armour from City of Wichita on there as the point of contact. And then as I mentioned before, the HOS system that Sedgwick County is using for work zone notifications is an example also of kind of leveraging connected vehicle technologies to communicate hazards. And then I always end on this slide. So this effort of looking at safe systems falls under our strategic highway safety plan as a state. And we always like to do a little call to arms if anybody wants to join our various emphasis area teams, which are kind of working groups that work on strategies and implementation efforts. We also have a Friends of the Executive Coalition group. That executive coalition actually meets this Wednesday at 10 a.m. And if you want to listen in on how those meetings go, you can always join the Friends group. And then the last point is our strategic highway safety plan is a 5-year document. And so beginning in early 2024, we're going to try and kick off the update of the strategic highway safety plan. And we will be taking this safe system approach into consideration in that plan development. So I know that's a really high level overview and extremely fast, but Susan and I are available for any questions or comments.
Well, thank you. Are there any questions for Vanessa or Susan? Seeing none, I appreciate your report.
Thank you.
All right, next we have committee and partnership updates. Are there any updates? Seeing none, are there any other business?
Yes. Let me get there. Whoop. There we go. So the one other business thing we have is the City of Wichita's Bike Master Plan survey has opened. And so we just wanted to provide everybody with that link. It's wichitabicycleplan.com. It'll be available, I believe, for 30 days. So please take the survey.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Next, we have adjournment. Make a
So
motion. Go for it. Make a motion. We adjourn today's meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anybody want to stay around? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you all.